morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us for today's Expert Roundtable. People from around the world are participating in this event. To ensure a stable connection and considering the large number of attendees, your video and audio functions have been disabled. There will be a short question and answer session at the end of today's Expert Roundtable. You've already sent more questions than we have time for, so thank you. Please note that we may only have time for a couple of questions at the end, so we may not be able to get to yours, and we will not be able to answer questions in writing. Finally, today's session is being recorded and will be made available online in the near future. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to William D. Macwood IV, Director General of the NEA. Sir.
Thank you very much, G, and welcome to all of you. Welcome to this very important seminar to discuss the new launch of the NEA framework for irradiation experiments known as FIDES. This is really a very important event, and it's important because of the relevance of the work that it represents. The development of new fuels materials to go into nuclear power facilities around the world is a critical part of the advancement of the state-of-the-art of the technology of nuclear power. But in order to assure the safety and integrity of these materials and fuels, they have to be tested. And in the nuclear sense, that means testing them in an irradiation facility, a research reactor. These reactors have become a very limited resource around the world, but they're essential to test fuels that enable us to enable reactors to operate more efficiently and more safely, materials that allow reactors to operate for lengthy periods of time. But in order to benefit from these various new technology developments, including new fuels that are more accident tolerant than fuels we use today, the testing has to be conducted to collect experimental data that are used by industry, by regulators around the world to assure that these materials and fuels are safe. For many, many years, the world relied on the Halden Reactor located in Norway. Halden Reactor operated under a joint project, as we call it, in cooperation with the Nuclear Energy Agency for the last 60 years. So it's a very, very long-term project for us, and one that was extraordinarily successful. That was at the heart of advancement in fuels and materials work around the world for many, many years. Unfortunately, as this facility aged and became more expensive to operate, its operators decided at the time had come to shut it down. So in 2018, the Halden Reactor was shut down. And this left a very interesting situation for the nuclear community. They had relied very heavily on this facility, not just as a facility for radiation, but really as a hub of an environment of exchange and understanding about fuels and materials research that was that leveraged experience around the world to mutual benefit. This loss was one that we felt had to be dealt with. So very soon after the reactor shut, the NEA convened discussions with our community to talk about what we can do about this. Obviously, the ideal solution might be to build a new large research reactor someplace, but that's a very expensive and long-term project. Instead, we came upon the idea that perhaps what we should do is to look at all the facilities that still exist around the world and bring them together under one umbrella so that the experiments could be conducted in a coordinated fashion and we could recreate that environment of exchange that existed under the Halden Reactor for so many years. These discussions took shape and eventually became what we call today the Framework for Irradiation Experiments, FIDES. Where I come from, we call this a very big deal. This is a truly unique framework that has been assembled over a long period of years. Since 2018, these discussions have progressed and continued. And finally, earlier this year, 27 partners representing 12 countries around the world came together and signed an agreement to proceed with the FIDES project. So we are here today to talk about FIDES and what it means to the international community. And joining me here to talk about it is a very illustrious group of speakers who will give some thoughts, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. And as I read your names, please come on screen. And the first is Jean-Christophe Niel, who's Director General of the French Institute of Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety, IRSN, and is also chair of the NEA's Committee on the Safety of Nuclear Installations. Jean-Christophe, welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, and thank you for this FIDES project. So I would like to stress several items. So the first one is the importance of research in nuclear safety. And the role of research in safety is to improve nuclear safety through several means. First, it is the development of knowledge and the reduction of uncertainties. The second is this research is key to the validation of simulation tools and methodologies. The third role of research is to maintain scientific and technical excellence in assessment. And the fourth one, this research allows to develop and maintain high-level skills. Somewhere among research in safety, there is a crucial part which is experimentation. And from my point of view, experimentation is necessary and cannot be avoided. This experimental research is crucial because it allows the development of a database and models which are needed for simulations and methodology used in safety assessment, either by the operator or by the technical safety organization, the TSO or the safety authority. The advanced simulation tool will need experiments, even if they are more sophisticated than the preceding one. My second item is related to the joint project of the NEA. The NEA joint projects we were driven by CSNI contribute in an essential and unique manner to nuclear safety. It is a very efficient way to increase knowledge in nuclear safety. It also allows to gather the best international expert on one topic around an international experimental project. And I think that this capacity, this ability to bring together and to structure international research in safety is something which differentiate the NEA from other international organizations. This joint project contributes to nuclear safety by improving knowledge on the physical phenomena and on the behavior of industrial components. It also contributes to the validation of simulation tools. It also, on the other hand, to maintain experimental facilities, and there have been a group from the CSNI called the CESAR group, which studied the critical facilities, experimental facilities, scientific facilities which are necessary for the safety in the mid and long term, and which could disappear if no program was performed in it. My third point is this point. There is a real danger that there is a lack of investment for experimental facility, and the risk that some of them may disappear, some of them which are necessary. In that sense, FIDES will limit this risk, but the risk doesn't disappear. And the CESAR group, mandated by the NEA and the CSNI, made an inventory of the experimental platform for all the fields that's been fuel, criticity, fire, thermohydraulic. Make an inventory of the facility which are of the platform, experimental platform, which are necessary in the midterm for research in nuclear safety. The CESAR group noted that some facilities disappeared, and at the same time identifies those which I mentioned to be critical. Critical means three criteria. First, they are necessary for safety, to perform study, research in safety. Second, they are unique. And third, replace them would require a certain amount of of financement. So it's a rather expensive facility. And among this critical facility, research reactors were our primary concern. And among this reactor, it was specifically noted that the one which were working on accident, I mean injection of reactivity or loss of cooling, were specifically concerned. It is not so critical for irradiating of materials, where there are still some reactors and even new ones like the reactor Jules Horowitz. My fourth point is the needs about fuel. Nuclear fuel is a very complex object, and the behavior of this, the understanding of the behavior of fuel, either in normal condition, accidental situation, needs many fields, many disciplines like metallurgy, physics of ceramics, mechanics, chemistry, thermohydraulics, neutronics. Such topic like the behavior of the cladding, which is very important because it is the first barrier between the environment and the radioactive product, is itself quite difficult to understand, with many phenomena like production of fission products, formation of bubbles in the material, fragmentation, oxidation of the cladding, and so on and so forth. So what is at stake here is to understand this complex phenomenon, to predict the behavior of the fuel in domain where there are high coupling, or there is very high coupling between the domains which I mentioned. So even if the software, scientific software for simulation from the new generation, multi-physics, multi-scale, have made a lot of progress, there will still always a need, I would say even more, a need for large-scale test on nuclear fuel to investigate the performance of fuel in normal situation, or to explore their behavior in accidental situation, especially beyond design. And the simulation tool, even the very high-level new ones, requires modelization and data, and this modelization data can only be found in experimentation. And from that point of view, the experimental research reactor provide a unique way to make experiment, because they at the same time provide conditions for the fuel itself, but also for the environment of the fuel, which is key in the understanding of the behavior. My fifth and last point will be about FIDES. So FIDES is clearly an essential contribution to optimize at the international level the use of heavy infrastructure, I mean the reactor, and also to develop experimental capacities in the reactor. I mean, there is a reactor, but there is also the experimental device and the instrumentation. These two parts of the topic. So I want to stress the importance of the reactor, which are able to perform accidental situations, because for radiation, I think the situation is less critical. For the future, what I see, so FIDES is a really big step in the good direction, and I really thank the agency and especially Tatiana to shape FIDES in such a short time. So nevertheless, we need to have some attention on some topic. First, we will have to check that the process that we organize all together under the authority of the agency is a virtuous and sustainable system, especially concerning the funding. My second point is that NEA has developed very efficient tools which are working well, like the committees and the working groups. And I think that FIDES must rely and use the organization and the comitology of the agency. I speak for the committee I chair, and I indeed think about the CSNI this comitology in IEN, the committees and the working groups and the PRG in the case of CSNI has proved to be efficient on the long term to construct experimental project connected with safety needs. And I would like to say that inside CSNI, 2 working groups, the one on fuel, WGFS, and the one on materials, WGAG, has made considerable work about the state of the art and the identification on the need on safety, the development of models, and the development of simulation tools. So this is ending my introductory word. I would like to thank you once more, the NEA, you, Bill, because I think you really push, you make it a personal affair. I think it's a very good point. And I would like to thank Tatiana also, who didn't limit our work to make this a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe. And again, I think we'll have a chance to thank Tatiana as she gets to speak. She'll give an overview presentation of FIDES for our audience at the end of the opening remarks. So let me go on to Ray Furstenau, who's the Director of Regulatory Research at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Ray, the floor is yours for your opening comments.
Thank you, Director General Macwood, and I agree with what you said early on. This is a big deal for all of us, and I wanted to thank the NEA. I remember those very early discussions with you and Daniel Ericane on the concept of FIDES, and then I know Tatiana, Marcus, and the rest of the FIDES team really took it on board and really kept it going and made it a reality in a relatively short period of time, and they never gave up. You guys never gave up on this, and I'm very very happy about that. So thank you and the entire team. I think NEA really provides a perfect organizing function for the FIDES framework. I know Jean-Christophe Neal brought up some of those points. That international agreements, as we all know, when you start from scratch, can be very, very difficult and time consuming. And the NEA really provided that organizing function that we needed to make FIDES a reality. And I think in the future will really make it work. I think the international collaborations that are made possible through FIDES will benefit all of us in our respective fuels and materials research programs, whether you're with a TSO, a regulator, a laboratory, a vendor, whatever. We think it is an essential component to all of our safety research programs. For example, at the NRC, our research programs now are involving accident-tolerant fuel concepts, plant material aging phenomena, advanced reactor fuels and materials and manufacturing processes, and all of these, I think, will benefit from the FIDES experiments we currently have planned and those that will come in the future. I think high-quality experiment data is important, and I think FIDES will help fill some of those data gaps and reduce uncertainties that, for example, in the NRC, that fill gaps in our safety codes that we use for our confirmatory analysis for existing and new reactor applications. I think the FIDES framework also promotes risk sharing by the participating organizations, the JEEP operating agents, and the JEEP core groups. And I think that the proposed JEEPs with their time schedules and also the funding contribution schedules, I know from the NRC standpoint, it really helps us in planning for our budget requests through our organizations. I think the idea of FIDES and the distributed network of test facilities and post-irradiation examination facilities promotes the sharing of ideas, instrumentation, expertise among participants, and helps us helps us all grow our knowledge and also helps us spread the risks that a distributed network offers. I don't think any of us individually really have the luxury of limitless funding to maintain the wide range of necessary nuclear capabilities. We need to be able to share our research capabilities, not just our funding, but instrumentation, post-radiation examination facilities, and our database and knowledge. And in closing, I'd just like to say, we at the NRC see the advantages of participating in FIDES and want to do everything we can to ensure its success. So I'd like to congratulate all the participants in FIDES and really, again, thank you, Director General Magwood, and your team for making it a reality. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Ray. We appreciate that. And I also should note that Ray served as the chair of many of the discussions that brought this to fruition. So Ray, this is as much your success as it is ours, because we appreciate it very much. You were able to guide these conversations to a successful conclusion. So again,
it's my pleasure.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is Alexander Tuzoff, who is Director General of the Research Institute of the Atomic Reactors, REAR, and Director General of the Institute of Physics and Power Engineering in Russia. Alexander, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director General. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and it's an honor for me to speak today. I would like to say a few words about the road which we have passed together. As far as I remember, it took more than 3 years, and I remember very well how it started and our first discussions when we didn't know exactly how it will be, and we're trying to find the way to make the image of this new structure, and that was a very great job. And I also must say that it's a remarkable efforts from NEA staff, of course. Thanks for all what have done. I think that right now we can see several tendencies in our development, R&D development, and in our communications. We can see several challenges: aging research reactors, aging infrastructure from one side. From another hand, we can see that the tendency is to create a digital environment in experimental infrastructure with new complex techniques of experiments and post-radiation experiments. That means that the task of coupling of these aging experimental base with modern simulation tools is very complicated. And here we can say that the only way to meet this challenge, to win, is to share risks, to create the environment where all the community could choose the chances, choose the options of development. If we manage here to get also some support from governmental structures, it's just another benefit for all this system, and our chances for success certainly will rise. I am pleased to say that Rosatom signed the agreement last week. It was on April 14th. Thus, we have at least governmental support from our structure, and I think that that's good. Of course, we can see certain profits for R&D community with all these perspectives regarding the exchanging of expertise or common projects, very complicated projects. And I do think that we have a bright future. I would like to congratulate all the participants of FIDES, and of course, once again, to say thanks, many thanks to our NEA colleagues for the considerable efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Appreciate your comments very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Takahito Nakamura. He is Director General of the Nuclear Safety Research Center of Japan Atomic Energy Agency. And I give the floor to him for his remarks. Nakamura-san, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, introducing me. I'm quite happy to join this roundtable, and I'd like to congratulate FIDES project has started with many participants. I myself have spent most of my research career with testing reactors, Nuclear Safety Research Reactor, NSRR, which is a pulsing reactor for reactivity accident simulations, and Japan Material Testing Reactor, JMTR, for material degradation study for long-term use. Fortunately, I also had 2 occasions to be involved for a year or 2 in hot tests overseas, one at Oak Ridge National Lab for hot cell research on fission product releases, the other at Cadarache, France for fevers tests. They are both for severe accident research. These experiments gave me a kind of real sense of highly radioactive materials and difficulties handling them, in addition to the technical findings which were reported in journals or Congress. I believe these real feelings in the way of research, for example, accident simulation tests, are very important, not only for researchers, but also for engineers, inventors, and utilities. The international cooperation of OECD and NEA is one of the best occasions to have many researchers and engineers having different views got together over the world. I believe this kind of experience inevitably important for human resource development who are able to handle troubles with confidence based on their experience. I would like to emphasize again, finishing my words, that the sustaining experimental capability is essential base for safety through multi-stakeholders involvement, using them for not only for the technical development, but also for human resource development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, and thank you for making the point about human resource development. It's a very important aspect of this. Next, I give the floor to Kamal Pasamagulu, whose name I always butcher. Kamal is Executive Director of the Versatile Test Reactor Project at Idaho National Laboratory, and he's also the chair of our NEA Nuclear Science Committee. Kamal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, everyone. I will keep my comment fairly short. I am one of those who believe that there is always, well, not always, but often an opportunity in every crisis. Early Halden shutdown obviously triggered a crisis, triggered some innovative thinking, and got us where we are with respect to FIDES. Obviously, most of us, all of us, wish that Halden was still operating and we could use Halden and the capabilities that it represented as part of FIDES also. But this now opens a new way of collaboration, a new set of opportunities, being able to share experimental facilities, especially complex experimental facilities such as irradiation reactors, is in my opinion, is going to be a very impactful in terms of how we collaborate internationally, and it can potentially be a game-changing program with respect to advancing the fuels and materials research. Now, hopefully, most of us think that in the new era, in the 21st century, the nuclear energy is going to play an important role, especially within the context of clean energy or carbon-free energy. And continuous innovations in nuclear will enable us to do that. And you can only innovate for so long by relying on the fuels of the 20th century, even though those fuels served us very well within the envelope that was very well defined. But I always view fuels and materials, especially the core materials and fuels, as the engine of a car. And you can only innovate a car for so long without looking at a new way of putting an engine in there. So from that perspective, I think FIDES is going to be a very important program. I will make some short comments on with respect to FIDES. Starting it as quickly as we did, even though Bill said it took 2 or 3 years to get us where we are, but given this concept being so different than anything else we have done, starting it is very important. But to make it sustainable, we still have work to do, and I am hoping that as we progress with FIDES, it's going to be more and more impactful. One of the important items is going to be for NEA is trying to make a very tight connection between FIDES and all the relevant working parties, expert groups, and task forces. As we move forward and start doing more and more irradiations in different facilities, we have to start looking at sharing samples after the irradiation test, and any collaborations to facilitate that progress is going to be important. It can probably be easily tied to the FIDES framework. We always worry about experimental facilities, but certainly the experiment designed expertise that those facilities represent is equally as important. And the expertise that we relied on at Halden was very important. And we got to establish a similar set of expertise in those new facilities. As I said, I think it is going to be a game changer for the way we do international collaborations if we are successful. And hopefully it will set an example for other expensive and difficult to maintain experimental facilities in other areas. And finally, I truly believe that because of the nature of the types of experiments that FIDES will enable us to do, I think it will be instrumental in finally shifting to a faster and science-based paradigm for fuels and materials qualification. So those are more opening comments. To close my comments, I certainly want to thank NEA, everybody who was involved in getting FIDES to where it is today. It was a big effort. A lot of people contributed to it. But on behalf of Nuclear Science Committee that I'm representing today, I would like to specifically thank Tatiana for her tireless work, but also, I don't know if he's with us in this webinar, but Gilles Bignan from CEA, his work and his initial thinking for the very first experiment helped us quite a bit in defining what FIDES today is. So thank you, Bill. I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Made a lot of very important comments. including one I think bears some thought, which is how quickly, even though 2 or 3 years sounds like a long time, but in the scheme of these sorts of things is actually a very, very brief set of discussions when you think about it for something so different from what we were used to in the past. And I think it really speaks to the fact that everyone saw the need. And I believe that that was a driver for this whole process to allow it to reach a conclusion. So thank you for pointing that out. So our last panel speaker this afternoon is going to be Takanari Ogata. He is Deputy Director of the Nuclear Technology Research Laboratory, Associate Vice President of the Central Research Institute of Electric Power Industry of Japan, also known as CREEPI. Ogata-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Macwood. And congratulations on starting FIDES, thanks to Tatiana and other NEA staff members. Well, I'd like to say 2 points regarding the importance of FIDES as in industry side research organization. The first one is that the industry side organizations generally do not have irradiation test facility, but we need irradiation tests to get demonstration data for commercialization of new fuels or the cladding materials. Also, we need an irradiation test to confirm the safety of existing fuels and to explain it to a regulatory body. And also, we need irradiation test when we find new phenomena in irradiated fuel. In that case, we need irradiation test to understand the mechanism of that new phenomena. Well, for industry side organizations, when we plan and execute irradiation tests, we need to collaborate with the domestic or the international overseas organizations operating irradiation test facilities. So in that sense, the FIDES is very important for industry side organizations to make up collaboration on an irradiation test. Well, another thing is that many regulatory organizations from NEA member countries participate in FIDES frameworks. Industry side organizations desire keeping up with regulatory side research activities and sharing fuel safety data with regulatory side organizations to make a safety review process efficient. In that sense, international framework like FIDES will be beneficial and useful for industry side organizations to share fuel safety data with regulatory side organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here to provide an interesting perspective to all this, because I think you had some interesting insights there. So thank you very much. Now, at this point, I'm going to introduce Tatiana Ivanova, who is the head of the NEA's Division of Nuclear Science. As you heard from many of the speakers, Tatiana was a driving force for bringing this to a successful conclusion over the last few years. She worked tirelessly and creatively to make this happen. So in some sense, this is her party as much as anyone's, perhaps more than anyone else's. And so Tatiana, please take the floor. And if we were all here in person, we would break into applause for what you've accomplished in guiding us forward. But why don't you give the audience a description of what FIDES looks like, and then we'll have a discussion with the panel. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to all panelists for the kind words and for congratulations on the launch of FIDES. I'm very pleased to be here today and to give an overview presentation of FIDES. If you can share the slides. Okay, I will start without the slides. Over the past 3 years, the NEA has engaged with industry, regulators, their technical support organizations, and the research institutes to help member countries in mitigating the experimental gap created by the closure of numerous research reactors, including the widely used Halden Reactor project in Norway. In 2018-2019, NEA organized 4 international workshops with the participation of main stakeholders. And as a result of this extensive discussion, the international community has decided to establish a new NEA joint undertaking known as a Framework for Irradiation Experiments, or FIDES, and its Joint Experimental Programs, or JEPs. FIDES has been built in cooperation with the Committee on the Safety of Nuclear Installations, chaired by Jean-Christophe, and the Nuclear Science Committee, chaired by Kemal, and with a valuable input from the NI 2050 or Nuclear Innovation 2050 initiative. Following the support of the NEA Steering Committee in April 2019, NEA arranged numerous discussions of the technical, legal, and financial aspects of the framework. With input from participating organizations, we prepared FIDES agreement, and in parallel, detailed descriptions of joint experimental programs were developed, discussed with FIDES technical experts, and finalized in a series of dedicated technical workshops organized by operating agents of FIDES. FIDES was launched recently thanks to the valuable and proactive input from all the FIDES members and the cooperation across the agency. Next slide, please. FIDES has been built under Article 5 of the NEA Statute to bring together a network of key research reactors around the world to perform high priority experiments with fuels and materials on a cost-sharing basis and to safeguard the experimental knowledge. Resources provided by the FIDES signatories or parties will support multiple parallel joint experimental programs initiated under the umbrella of the framework agreement. The JEPs are established by interested parties or co-group members who will initiate and actively participate in them by providing in-kind or monetary contributions, and will be run by operating agents who will operate the experimental facility. In addition, FIDES will support cross-cutting activities, including a project on data preservation and quality assurance. For the moment, we've received proposals for 9 joint experimental programs. They will have different levels. They have different levels of maturity and cover a wide range of experimental needs identified by the FIDES community during the preparatory phase. The FIDES program of work for the first 3 years will include 4 joint experimental programs and the project on data preservation and quality assurance. The experimental work will be conducted at the research reactors and post-irradiation examination facilities in Belgium, Czech Republic, Japan, France, Russia, and the United States. Additionally, parties have supported the project that would preserve experimental data and elaborate the process and mechanisms of data quality assurance, analysis, and preservation. In order to avoid duplication of efforts and coordinate the FIDES activities with relevant worldwide ongoing endeavors, the NEA Secretariat will establish, when relevant, cooperation between FIDES and other research and development programs carried out under the auspices of the NEA and promoted by other stakeholders. Next slide, please. The initial FIDES program of work will consist of the 5 projects. First of them is JEP P2M, or program for quantified thermomechanical clad load mechanisms during light water reactor, slow transients, or power to melt and maneuverability. It will be performed at the BR2 reactor in SCK-CEN, Belgium, and at the post-irradiation examination facility LICA in CEA, France. Another program will study fuel road behavior under loss of coolant accident conditions and will be performed at the Mir M1 reactor in RER, Russia. In-pile creep studies of ATF claddings, or INCA, will be performed at the Elvera 15 material test reactor in the research center RES, Czech Republic. And finally, the hybrid experiments in reactivity-initiated accident, or HERA, will be performed at the transient reactor test facility in INL, the United States, and at the nuclear safety research reactor in GEA, Japan. All the measured data will be analyzed and preserved within the FIDES data preservation quality assurance project. Additionally, design of the experiments will be supported by modeling and simulation work, where all interested parties will be involved. This program of work will be proposed for approval by the FIDES Governing Board at its first meeting that will be held soon. Next slide, please. So the first FIDES agreement came into force on the 17th of March this year with 27 organizations representing safety, industry, and R&D from Belgium, Czech Republic, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Japan, the Netherlands, Russia, Spain, Switzerland, the United States, and the European Commission. Some academic organizations will be part of FIDES as a third parties. The initial FIDES budget for the coming 3 years is composed of approximately 13 million euros provided as parties' contributions and approximately 9.5 million euros that will be provided by the core groups of the 4 joint experimental programs. The NEA Secretariat is working with FIDES members to form the FIDES Governing Board and organize its first meeting in May 2021. FIDES is built to help sustain experimental capacities required to strengthen the development of fuels and materials for the benefit of a broad community of users in NEA countries. We hope that it will become a long-lasting and sustainable project similar to the Halden Reactor project. We thank our distinguished speakers for the support and valuable input they provided throughout the FIDES establishment. And of course, we very much appreciate the strong and proactive role that FIDES organizations and experts played in the design of this initiative. And we very much look forward to supporting our organization, FIDES organizations towards the implementation of the FIDES program of work. With this, I will finish my presentation and thank again everybody, the FIDES team and everybody who contributed to the launch and to the establishment of this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Let me invite all the speakers to join us on camera and we'll begin the discussion. Again, Tatiana, congratulations. I know this has been a lot of work. I've watched you, you can sometimes look a little exhausted, but you got there. So congratulations. A very important aspect of this is that the world keeps changing. And I wonder if you could give some views about how you think things are going to evolve over the coming decade. There's a lot of discussion about accident-tolerant fuels and other new technologies. How do you think things are going to change over the next decade? And do we have the right facilities to accommodate the experiments necessary to look at these new technologies? And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Maybe Jean-Christophe, you'd like to go first.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, this is indeed important questions. Where do we go? So the first thinking you may have is new technologies. like on the fuel itself, accelerant around fuel, but even new kinds of reactor like SMRs, even new materials. You may have new material development of new materials for the fuel assembly for the vessel. So this is the first evolution. The second one is we see that the operator wants to take advantage of safety margins. And safety margins needs to have a better knowledge of the behavior of the system, the fuels, and so on and so forth. So there is it's not it's maybe even with existing facilities. So you don't need necessarily to have new facilities, new materials to require experimental facilities like research reactor. And the last point which is connected to this one is the evolution of simulation. As I say, there are tremendous changes in simulation, multi-physics, multi-scale. At the same time, there is progress in instrumentations. So you can have more efficient, detection, more precise data, a wider range. So all this evolution, either on new technologies or on new ways to demonstrate safety, new tools in numerical tools requires a research reactor. Today, regarding the existing fleet, I think that the situation for irradiating materials is not the most critical one because there are several facilities, and the Julovis reactor should bring one more. I really think there is a critical situation on a reactor, experimental reactor working with transient. And so I think FIDES can help to answer this need. I may make a proposal here. Maybe it's time to have and we can discuss this at the CSNI, for example. Maybe it's time to have a collective thinking on what could be the experimental reactor of the future regarding a transient. Because all the reactors and transient are 60 or old. So even if we can manage to have them work some more years, they one day or another for safety reasons or efficiency reasons, they will have to stop. Efficiency reason, for example, regarding the scope of data you want to reach, or new reactors and things like that. So maybe there is a thinking about what could be the good research reactor of the future regarding transient. Thank you, Bill.
A very interesting point. We'll have to have a chat about that. I'm sure Kamal and others will have some thoughts about that. Let me ask Alexander Tuzoff also to comment on this. What do you see in the next decade in terms of the evolution of the need and the facilities' ability to accommodate that need?
Thank you. So, well, I dare to assume that the future demands for irradiation and post-radiation experiments highly likely will be stipulated for the, so to say, general pace of nuclear power development. Right now, we can obviously see that there is a clear tendency to slow down of PWR construction, for example. And we are right now, we can see, so to say, pressure from development of renewables. That means that so the future demands will be certainly very, very dependable from all these tendencies. So we hope for the innovations, and it is expected that, for example, small modular reactors and probably Gen 4 will create the pool of requests for next several years, maybe by year 2040. But the nearest decade, the demands are stable, and we are trying to substitute all these requests with the creating of the FIDES structure. And I'm speaking right now about all the variety of research reactors, ATR or BR2 or MIR in rear, it doesn't matter. So we are arriving to the idea that FIDES serves to organize the most effective way of utilization of this system, just to save money at least, and to establish a strong collaboration. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Maybe Mr. Nakamura, you'd like to comment on this as well.
Okay. I think that naturally, while we keep using nuclear energy, continuous improvement of the system is inevitable. Like car industries improve the products constantly in many aspects. Material development is one of the keys for nuclear use because severe conditions during the operating conditions and accidents. I experienced that small change in material composition or heat or mechanical treatment of the fuel cladding could affect a lot for long-term use in reactors. We know that accident-tolerant fuel ATFs are in development, and the short-term development we are going to use some kind of familiar materials like chromium-coated zirconium alloy, and for the midterm or long-term, silicon carbide would also could be utilized, and these require longer period for development, and the small modular reactors, SMRs, with various cooling system and design would also require long-term needs for development or the safety research. And I cannot imagine safe utilization of these to be realized without irradiation testing. And obviously many testing reactors would be too old for that long-term needs. In Japan, we are planning a new material testing reactor, which is a successor of GMTR, but the new MTR would not stand by itself and fulfill the needs. Combination of hot labs and the other type of testing reactors like transient, which Mr. New said are essentially important to cover all the steady state through accident. And the international cooperation like FIDES would also be essentially important to cover needs and best use of characteristic infrastructures with larger players. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those thoughts. Let me inject an audience question at this point, because I think it's an important question, Tatiana, I'd like to direct to you. And that audience question is, how can other countries join the FIDES program or utilize the services?
It's a good question. The good news that a country would like to join FIDES. I think you please contact us. We will arrange a meeting. And also this request should be approved by the governing board that will be created soon. Please let us know and we will discuss with you.
Okay, thank you. So another question that I think is very interesting that has come up. We heard from Mr. Ogata about how the industry perspective on this. And one of the unique things about the conversations that Ray, that you led, were that it brought regulators and industry to the same table to talk about these subjects. But long term, does that present any challenges for you and Mr. Ogata? Because you have, industry which is looking for commercial benefit, looking for efficiency, performance. Regulators focus on safety. Is there a conflict inherent in this, or do you see this as something that can be navigated relatively easily? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think it can be navigated easily or not. We'll have to wait and see. But I do, Ogata-san, I did note on in your early discussion about sharing of fuel safety data. I think that's very important to do with the regulators and the vendors and the and others. I think that the research and development stage, like where we're at with FIDES experiments and others, is that early R&D data is data. And as long as the data has a high quality, high pedigree, and we should all be able to share that data and use it for our purposes. We can maintain our independence as a regulator, and we don't need to jeopardize that by sharing data. We use the data for different things, obviously. For the NRC, for example, we'd use it for confirmatory analysis, but that data is needed to, like I'd mentioned earlier, to help validate our safety codes for areas that we don't have the experience or data with. So I think we need to recognize that we can all benefit from high quality data from programs like FIDES, and we just have to recognize that the vendors and the industry certainly have different reasons for using the data, and it's okay that they're using it to develop maybe better fuels, more competitive fuels. That's okay, but that shouldn't have to be a conflict with what the regulator needs the data for as well.
Mr. Ogata, want to comment on that?
Well, I do not think the safety and economic efficiency are the opposing concepts. Well, economic efficiency is purpose. The safety is necessary condition. It cannot be separated. For example, ATF. The concept of ATF to be commercialized must be cost effective, but also it must improve the safety of nuclear power plant. So safety and cost effectiveness cannot be separated. So even though you can test some fuel, new fuels or another new materials, it will serve improvement of safety and also cost effectiveness. It's not in the same line. Is that answer?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Ray, let me bounce back to you for just a moment, because it was an audience question that was very relevant to something you said in your earlier response about sharing the data. And I wonder if you have an opinion about this. The audience question is there any possibility to assure that FIDES created data will be universally accepted by regulators around the world, or at least the participating regulators in FIDES? Do you have a feeling for how that might unfold?
Yeah, that's a good question from the audience, and I think that as we get started on these experiment programs, I think we ought to be able to borrow a lot from the Halden's success on, we all, I think most of us use data from Halden experiments for our individual organization needs. And we need to look at the quality assurance programs and the rigor that went with that. And as we get started on these experiment programs, we have some different players now. We need to reach a common understanding of what may be acceptable for that quality of the data, so that we can all use it. I think that's a very, very important point, and we do need to address that very, very early in the process. Thanks.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I don't know, John Christoph, would you like to comment on that point?
Yes, that's an interesting question. In fact, for me, there are two dimensions. There's one dimension which is the quality of the data. Is it a good scientifically speaking, technically speaking data? And I think it is not the responsibility, or at least the own responsibility of the safety body. It's a scientific question. Is the data a valuable one? Is the condition to do the experiment are correctly documented, are well measured? So you have the data. And I think everyone can agree on the quality of the data once they have access to the relevant information. So operator, research organization, TSO, safety authority can agree that this is a good scientific data. Then there is a second question, is for what do you use the data? And then you can have a very good technical data, but which doesn't, for example, necessarily answer, is not completely fitted to answer safety questions. Even if the data is good, it can be not completely appropriate to answer safety questions. So it's two different questions. And the second one, it is the purpose of the safety assessment. In fact, it's to agree on the ways the data are used to support the safety demonstration. And I see I don't see object on the level of principles. I don't see objections that the different parties can agree on the fact that this data is fitted to this safety use, and I think it is the purpose of the discussion between operator, TSO, and regulatory body.
Thank you. And well, since we're speaking, Jean-Christophe, one inherent purpose of FIDES is to strengthen the overall infrastructure around the world for irradiation experiments. And obviously what we're hoping to achieve with this is to not lose another major facility, not lose another major research reactor. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about how we will know if we're successful in that. Obviously, one measure of success is not losing facilities, but in the shorter term, is there a way to tell, is it a matter of watching the support from industry and governments to the facilities? How would you measure success as we launch into this? Jean-Christophe, that was...
I'm sorry, that's for me. Okay, I was not sure. Okay, so it's also a good question for such a project, which there are many people, a lot of work to prepare it, and a budget which is a good budget. So it's a good question. So maybe we have to go back to the objective. So the objective were several. First is to provide knowledge for safety. So it's the first objective. The second objective is to save facilities. And the third objective is to promote international cooperation. So maybe for each of these objectives, we can have a kind of indication. I wouldn't use the word indicator, because indicators refer to quantitative approach. I'm not sure it is possible, but we can have a qualitative approach. And for example, for the fact that the program are delivering useful data, a good way to check this is that are there candidates? Are there countries? For example, we have just a discussion of one of the participants asking the question, how do we join the program? If you have an organization, country joining the program, it means that the program is interesting, because you need to put some money in it. So it's interesting. So it can be an indication of the use for research. The second is can we say facilities? Just check if we can. There are not so many, in fact. There is a limited number, so we can check if facilities are at risk or not. And we can have discussion with the countries in which they are. Is there pressure or tension on the funding of the facility? So this can be an indication for the second objective. And the third objective, which is promote international cooperation. Once more, you can look at the number of participating country, participating organization, and fundings. So I think we can have not indicators, but indications, qualitative indications that can, in the midterm, show if a FIDES meet the success which we think it will meet. But we can check that from this, I think.
Thank you. Maybe Kamal, you'd like to comment on it as well.
Yeah, well, the value proposition, Bill, for FIDES is basically for the price of maintaining one facility and conducting experiments in one facility, you're getting access to multiple facilities in different places. And another way of looking at it is for the price, for the amount you're going to spend to conduct one experiment, you spend the same amount of money, but now you have access to 6 different experimental data. So that's the value proposition. As long as we can maintain that, and the national programs see the value of what's coming from FIDES, I think it's going to be sustainable. The key elements, in my opinion, are that we have to be able to complete these projects on time and within budget. If a national program is relying on a piece of data, and if that trickles down and stretches the schedule of national programs, at some point people will give up on it. So as long as we can maintain the value proposition, I truly believe that it is going to encourage the participating countries to maintain their facilities and to make sure that they are a strong player in there. And that does require that we do have a strong governance model on these, tied very closely to the local project management. And certainly we have to find ways of minimizing the international bureaucracy and maximizing the local decision making.
That's very much related to another question that we've seen here, which is not just how do we keep the facilities sustainable, but how do we keep FIDES sustainable? You know, and I think Kamal highlighted a few points that probably, you know, just being successful in accomplishing things on time and on budget, that's going to be a big factor. But maybe Mr. Tuzoff, you can elaborate on that. What do you think will make FIDES a long-term sustainable program for years to come?
Very good and very interesting question. My view is that the most critical condition is to be flexible, since we are dealing with very technically complicated projects. So we need to so to say, we need to produce very adjustable technical approaches with each project, and that will need to keep alive online the team of experts, which could give the opinion on each project, of its implementation, of its finalization, of utilization of results. And since we will have such an expert team in NEA or whatever, in which organization, we will keep alive, and FIDES will be sustainable for a long time.
Thank you. Mr. Nakamura, maybe you have a thought about this as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that the key to have the long-lasting program are the number of participants, and as was the question from the public, there were information not described on open journals, and the important things sometimes are behind the dangers, and knowing those things required to be participate mutually on the program. So the mutual participants on the project, numbers of mutual participants on the projects are essentially important, and if the many stakeholders get together in the project, that would enhance the other participant, and that is one of the key, I think, for the sustainable, the FIDES to be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray, how about you? Do you have a thought about this one?
Yeah, I do. I agree with Alexander about the flexibility. I think we, by having these multiple organizations and facilities, we have to be flexible. We have to be willing to compromise. I think we all know with operating research and test facilities and complicated equipment that things go wrong sometimes, and we have to be able to be flexible and adapt to that. I do think that we have to be open and transparent as possible, so when things do go wrong, we can bring it to the attention of the governing board and other participants, so that we can then figure out where to go with it. I think in the sustainability of FIDES as well, I think I agree with Mr. Nakamura about the number of participants. We need to keep that participant base there. But we also, I think, early on need to show successes. I think that, of course, the first, maybe the first couple of years or more, we're not going to see experiment results. But I think we need to think of ways during that time, how can we show that that FIDES is fulfilling the charter? Because I think we all have the issue when we're planning budgets and asking for budgets. You always get asked, well, what is this doing for me? You know, why should I continue to contribute to that? And I think the early on stages, yeah, we can explain that away a little bit, but I think we have to start showing early successes to make sure it's sustainable.
Thank you. Mr. Ogata, maybe an industry perspective on this. What do you think?
Okay, I will answer industrial answers. Well, basically, I agree with Mr. Nakamura-san. Well, but I would say another answer. I think three conditions. First one is each Jeep should be attractive to many participating organizations. For this, I think sufficient number of new Jeeps should be proposed every year to the governing board. I watched the last slides from Tatiana-san. Already, 4 or 5 Jeeps are waiting for selection. So in that sense, I am optimistic. Well, that's why the number of the Jeep proposal is important. I think that the Jeep selected by governing board out of many proposals will be attractive and beneficial to the many participating organization. You know, there will be a competition. That's the first one. And second, my second condition will be that lineup of the Jeeps under implementation should be renewed in an appropriate period to avoid obsolescence. The third one is very industry side answer. Well, the keeping the FIDES budget at an appropriate level, low level, will be important to make FIDES network sustainable. Budget might be very important for sustainable. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's a very pragmatic comment to make, but it's one that's absolutely correct as well. Let me inject an audience question, and maybe Jean-Christophe, if you could take this one initially, which is an excellent question because I know it was discussed quite frequently during the various conversations, which is, will FIDES be able to test foreign fuel materials in research reactors? Will you be able to take rods from overseas and import them for testing? And what does that look like? Jean-Christophe, you want to take that one first?
Okay, so the question is, if I understand clearly the question, it is the ability to transport materials from one place to another to the test reactor. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the question.
Yeah, if you want to take a fuel rod from a third country, take it to France or to Russia.
Yes.
Can FIDES do that? And that's the question.
That's not. I think it's not an easy question because it's related to the various regulations, and we know that for transportation it is always complicated. So it may be. I think it's a question which goes much, which is much larger than the question of FIDES. Is it possible to transport from one place to another the material to be tested? It's very specific to the material and to is it just the cladding or it is a nuclear material, which is a different regulation. It is also security regulations or safety regulation. But it's not an easy. It is not an easy test. We know that from I think each of us from experience. I'm not sure I can go further than that. Indeed, then there are also questions on the consistency between the materials and the reactor. But it's more technical question. But I think the regulatory question is probably it may be a difficult part of the question, and it's something which must be looked at maybe in the choice of the material, in the definition of the program.
Mr. Tuzoff, want to comment on that?
We have exchanged a lot of information, and basically all what we have said today is correct. So I just appreciate what was my colleagues commented for this topic.
Okay, thank you very much. As everyone can see, this is a complicated question. That I think the real answer is that it has to be looked at on really a case-by-case individual basis, and there'll be discussions that will be very complex. I'm willing to say it's not necessarily impossible, but it's also not entirely straightforward and easy either. I think that's probably a fair way to characterize it. Let me, Tatiana, an interesting question that someone raised in the audience is that many of the NEA joint projects in the past have sheltered information, have not published the information in open journals. Do you think FIDES will be different? Will FIDES publish information in open journals?
Thank you, Bill. It's a good question. In the FIDES agreement, according to the FIDES agreement, the information can be published in the open journals, provided the agreement by the governing board, similar to other joint projects in the NEA. And in addition to this, after the end of the project, the data will be disclosed after a certain period of time. Usually it's about 3 years after the end of the project. And provided, and so this data can also be provided through the NEA data bank per request. So I think that it will be, the governing board will decide which data can be published or not within FIDES.
Okay, good, thank you. So the answer is maybe.
The answer- sorry.
Yeah, no, we're actually out of time. I'm going to go ahead and ask one question. I'll just toss this to whoever feels they would like to answer it, because I think it's an interesting question. And that is, as we look into long-term data needs in the future, we're going to need enhancements to various facilities. We can't do all the experiments we want to do today. Will FIDES help make those modifications to facilities to enhance their capabilities for the future? Anyone like to take that question?
Well, I can get it started, Bill. I am hoping that that is the case. That will be the justification to be able to make those modifications. Finding a facility that is closest to it, that is easiest to modify, and make those modifications, and also some modification, make sure that we don't try to turn the experiments into I have a hammer, so everything needs to look like a nail, and we basically tailor the hammers to the nail that we have in all the facilities. So that is one of my hopes out of FIDES, is that it is going to justify those modifications that we are going to need as we go to the future, because we are going to need instrumented tests, we are going to need different data collection schemes, and this FIDES will give us the reason why we should do that.
Mr. Tuzoff, did you want to comment? I know she took herself off.
So the requests from customers, from vendors, will stipulate the change as for me, and I think that FIDES structure will facilitate this change, these modifications, and so I fully agree with Kemal. It's our.
Thank you. Well, I think on that very positive and hopeful note for the future, we'll wrap up the conversation. Let me thank the panel, excellent panel today, excellent conversation. I believe that many of the questions that were asked today, particularly by the audience, are questions that will continue to be asked by FIDES community in the months and years ahead. I think there's still a lot of discussion that will yet be had about the future. And of course, I think at the end of the day, the real future will depend on which experiments are needed and what new technologies and new materials and new fuels are presented to the community. And certainly we at the NEA look forward to working with all of you to deal with those changes and deal with those questions. And again, I thank you for being with us today and being with us over the last several years as this process has unfolded. Before we close out, let me just take a very quick moment to just thank all the participants, not just those with us today. As I said, we had 27 parties sign the FIDES agreement. That was a truly complex number of participants to have in one agreement. They have very different perspectives and very different needs, but they came together to make this a success. And we believe that this will be an enduring framework. And in particular, the operating organizations, SCK, CNN in Belgium, UJV, RES in the Czech Republic, CEA in France, JAEA in Japan, RIAR in Russia, INL in the US. All these operating agents are going to be the active part of FIDES, and particularly thank them for their strong support for this going forward. And particularly also like to thank the NEA team led by Tatiana. And early on in the process, we should really mention Daniel Irradiate, who was Deputy Director General of the NEA at the time, who I think he was that FIDES actually his idea. I think he actually came up with the name, which everyone struggles to pronounce. So if anyone wonders why we have this complicated name, it's Daniel's fault. But again, but a lot of people contributed to this. A lot of people worked hard to make this a reality. So very much thanks to everyone involved. So with that, G, do you want to close us out?
Thank you very much, Director General Macwood, and many thanks to our distinguished panelists and to all who listened in. We appreciate your participation. Today's expert roundtable has been recorded and will be available online in the coming days. Make sure you follow the NEA on Twitter and LinkedIn to keep in touch with us and receive updates on events like this one. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you.